Thank you very much, Sister Cheng and Sister Good, for today's puja. Now let us welcome Brother Ghatikara Loo to begin his Dhamma sharing. Please be invited, Brother Ghatikara Loo.
Thank you very much, Sister Doris, for the very kind introduction. And very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm indeed very happy that I'm able to share and discuss the Dhamma with you again this morning. Okay, so before we begin with today's Dhamma discussion, let us first of all put our palms together in Anjali and pay our highest and deepest respect and homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One, whom through his great effort and sacrifice, he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that is enabled to practice the true Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, again, a very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm indeed very happy, and glad that that I'm able to again meet with all of you, to share the Dhamma and have the Dhamma discussion this morning. And for today's Dhamma discussion, I've actually selected this sutta from the Majjhima Nikāya, which is the collection of the middle length discourses delivered, by the Blessed One. And this sutta is actually extracted from sutta number 138. And of course, the title of this sutta is actually entitled, the exposition of summary. But if you actually look at the underlying discourse that was given by the Buddha, in terms of the main essence of this sutta itself, it actually relates to a very interesting, and very inspiring topic, that is actually something that's actually very important to all the practicing Buddhists, especially for all of us, who actually practice the Dhamma, and also for us, who actually practice bhavana in terms of mental development. So this area, that relates to this sutta, MN 138, is actually a very important, and also a very crucial point, that the Buddha has actually taught, throughout the suttas, especially in respect of mental development in terms of meditation. And this, of course, relates to what the Buddha actually has named this meditation as the three aspects of this meditation, which comprising, firstly, it is a signless meditation, and secondly, it is actually what the Buddha called, is the undirected meditation, and thirdly, it is the emptiness meditation, sunyata. So if you look at this sutta itself, it is very rich in its meaning, because it actually um, covers and relates to these three very important aspects of meditation that the Buddha has taught throughout all the discourses that the Buddha taught in relation to meditation. You will find that there is actually a common thread that runs through all the discourses. For example, the Buddha has taught in many discourses about the sixth sense basis, and then the sixth sense objects, in terms of the internal and external sense basis, in it's right, in terms of how we should contemplate them, in the various suttas, like for example, the six sets of six, in MN 148. So all these suttas, that actually provide, the very core knowledge, and the very core essence of what the Buddha taught, in terms of, how, we should actually direct our mind and contemplate, all these are actually interweave so beautifully, with this MN 138 that actually relates to this signless, undirected, and emptiness meditation, And of course, you'll be wondering exactly what is this signless meditation that the Buddha has spoken about in many suttas, if you actually go through, what the Buddha has actually mentioned in the suttas, invariably the Buddha makes reference to this silence meditation, and also this meditation about what the Buddha calls the undirected, meditation, and also, and also this emptiness meditation. So all these three meditations are actually, um, they they interweave very closely with each other, and um uh they are always referred to by the Buddha in in one set. They always come hand in hand together. When the Buddha talks about signless, then of course there's always this undirected and always this aspect on this emptiness meditation. So they are actually uh um they actually in a way support each other in terms of how the Buddha actually explained in terms of these three ways of meditation. And you would also find from the various suttas that the Buddha himself also more often than not, when he actually goes into seclusion, and when he goes into say retreats, and he doesn't want anyone to disturb him, he goes into very deep samadhi, and he always tells Venerable Ananda, that I actually went into this signless samadhi, signless concentration, and it gave him a lot of joy and a lot of uh, rapture and joy, when he actually was abiding in this signless concentration, and in even for example like this Venerable Moggallana, when he was striving, to attain arahantship, he also actually practiced the signless concentration, signless meditation, So as you can see, this signless meditation is indeed an aspect of meditation, that is very important, especially for Buddhist meditators. So I think we should actually have clarity in terms of what this silence meditation is, and this silence meditation, of course, goes hand in hand also with this undirected meditation. So there are suttas where the Buddha also makes reference to undirected meditation and directed meditation. So what exactly is this undirected meditation? That of course um, uh, also then goes hand in hand with this aspect of what the Buddha calls the directed meditation. So what is the difference between this undirected and directed meditation? So then of course there's another sutta that also makes reference to this, and of course the crown jewel of the Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma, that throughout this 45 years of the dispensation that the Buddha has given, in actually um, teaching the Dhamma, and then and also his establishing of the Buddha Sasana of the 45 years. The crown jewel of this is actually what the Buddha called is the emptiness meditation. That it's very much goes hand in hand with this contemplation and realization of non-self, the anatta, that is actually used, to actually for us to realize, the intrinsic nature of all sankharas, which is actually emptiness, empty, and it's non-self, you know, um, and intrinsically it means that there's actually no a permanent unchanging self, that is um, dependently arisen. It is actually dependently constructed and fabricated through causes and conditions, that there's actually no underlying permanent unchanging self, that you can actually ascribe to this self that's unchanging, that's not dependent on causes and conditions. You can never find that. That's why the Buddha says, "Sabbe Dhamma anatta." Everything is non-self. So intrinsically empty. So by virtue of this, this very important, and the crown jewel of the Buddha's teaching, then we will need to also apply what the Buddha taught in terms of this contemplation of non-self, in order for us to realize the intrinsically, empty nature, the emptiness, the empty nature of all sankharas, of constructed phenomena. So that's why this emptiness meditation is also a very important aspect, for the practicing Buddhists, especially those who meditate. That's why this MA 138, is such a powerful and inspiring sutta, because in this sutta, we can actually also understand, what exactly this signless concentration is, and ultimately, what emptiness samadhi or emptiness meditation is. So, uh, so all in all, this sutta will provide us a very important understanding and appreciation, of what the Buddha actually taught, and the and the spiritual path that should be taken, for us to strive, towards achieving various stages of enlightenment, of realization, of fruition, that will lead us ultimately to the final goal of arahantship, that will unshackle us, from the bonds of samsara, So that's why it's so important for us to understand this, because it actually underscores the very true path, the spiritual path that we should tread, so that, we can walk along this path, that has been, laid down by the Blessed One, and that provide us with the guidance. So you see, actually more often than not, I actually hear uh, many um, people, including Buddhists ourselves, and these are Theravadin Buddhists, who actually make the remark that they actually make this observation, and they often they tell me that, oh, yeah, of course the suttas are very important because they record, the very um core, the very important teachings, in the pristine form, in the pure form, as what they had been actually taught, by the Buddha, and what has been spoken by the Buddha, the words of the Buddha, which was spoken by the Buddha, more than 2,600 years ago, which had been transmitted from the time, in Varanasi, from, Deer Park, when the first, Dhamma discourse was given, until, the very last day, in Kusinara, when the Buddha passed into Paranibbana, so it actually records all these very, very treasure, the treasures of the Dhamma, are all embedded with this chest of suttas. So everybody agrees with that, but they actually made this observation that, yeah, but yeah, the Buddha actually did give some guidance, but what the Buddha taught in the suttas, in terms of how we should meditate, they are just essentially just the theories, they don't provide the practical guidance in terms of how, we should practice contemplation and meditation, and how we should develop bhavana. They make the observation that, oh, the suttas just provide the very skeletal background, the theories, the pure theories as to how meditation should be practiced, but not the flesh, not the actual the meat, the guidance that we are looking for, in terms of how meditation, should be practiced, so they say, oh, the suttas they just provide the skeletons only, but not the meat, not the meat. But and therefore, they quite sadly, they actually ascribe more importance, to um meditation manuals, and other literatures which are written by monks, after the Buddha has actually passed into paranibbana, so some other monks actually wrote, literatures, on meditation, and they ascribe such post-canonical literature as actually more important, and in fact, to be more uh, uh, as more authoritative, than the suttas themselves, and they actually find that all these post-analytical literature actually provide, a stronger and and more practical guidance, so many of nowadays, even including Theravadins, we actually then ascribe more value, to such literature like Visuddhimagga, and then and what happens is, a lot of the methods, which are taught in Visuddhimagga, if you actually read them carefully, they in many aspects, they actually run contrary to what the Buddha actually mentioned, in the suttas. One very good example is actually the practice of jhana, right? In Visuddhimagga, the way that the practice, the way that jhana should be cultivated is very, very different, from how jhana is described, in the suttas, by the Blessed One. So if you read the suttas, to practice jhana, there's actually no, it is actually not a prerequisite that you must actually see the nimitta, the light, and you must actually enter the light and make it stable and huge and enter the light, and then all your uh, sense doors are actually all cut off, and you don't know what's happening, and you totally are not aware, in terms of your sense doors, and as if you're in a trance, So, but that is actually not what the Buddha taught in the suttas, although, they have been described as such in Visuddhimagga, you know so um so that's why our Buddhist fraternity now, it is in a very, I would say, in a very fragmented stage, right? A very fragmented situation where we have so many different schools of Buddhist traditions and schools that teach different meditation, um that that many of Buddhists, just take them on face value, and because they regard the meditation teachers, as very authoritative, they are actually a very experienced, very, very highly regarded, very renowned, So they just take whatever that the masters teach them, in the different traditions, and they just practice them without questioning, and without actually um, ascertaining for themselves, whether the methods, taught by the teachers, are in line, with what the Buddha has actually stipulated, in the suttas, like what the Buddha actually mentioned in terms of four great references. Remember, whenever someone actually teaches you anything regarding the Dhamma, do not just reject and do not just accept, but you need to actually be very composed, very objective, and then just make reference back to what the Buddha has taught in the suttas, and make a comparison, whether, there's actually parity, or or equivalence, between, what has been taught by your teacher and, what is found in the suttas. That is a very important aspect, of Dhamma, practice, which is why the Buddha says, ehi passiko, you have to investigate for yourself, what is true, and not just take, like what the Buddha told the Kalamas, you actually have this, you have this a spirit of free inquiry, you must actually have a free mind to search for the truth, and nothing but the truth. And that is found in the suttas, it's not by, what the words spoken by your teachers, from another um practicing meditator, or even your teacher, your monks, your monastic teachers, of course, they are all very highly regarded, of course, we all respect whatever that's taught, but it's always our duty to always make a comparison, with the sutta, so that, we know, that the path that we're treading, is indeed, leading us towards, that ultimate happiness, which is nibbana. So we need to actually be sure of our direction. Otherwise, if you key in the wrong direction in Waze or Google Map, you may just end up in a different destination, which is not what you intended. And that is a great waste, because we only have this life, as a human being. We may not know next life where we will be, or whether the conditions are conducive for the practice. So that is an uncertainty. But right now, when the Buddhist Sasana is still, very much alive, and we have the Sangha members, who actually uphold the true Dhamma, and we are able to support the Sangha, and the Sangha, is able to teach us and guide us, in spiritual practice. So we should actually be very sure, that the path that we practice is actually indeed we are treading it, correctly. That's why, if you actually look at the current situation, we have a lot of teachings, like for example, some say, jhana is not required. Remember, like the Sukha Vipassana, Sukha Vipassaka, where we say, oh, jhana is not required. We can just delve straight into Vipassana. We don't need samatha, because samatha is a waste of time. It just lead you to the rebirth in the Brahma world, that's a lot of teaching, and we also have teachers that teach, you know, that whenever you meditate, you must actually um, make sure, you know, you close off all your sense doors, you know, and do not get in touch with any sense objects, you know, and cut off, you know, all contacts with sense objects, you know, and just focus on your primary object, which is your anapanasati, you know, or your rising and falling of your abdomen, you know, and that itself is meditation. You know, don't bother about sense objects, you know, don't disregard, you know, whatever you hear, just don't bother, cut off all your sense doors, and don't pay attention to them, you know. Um, that is one, also some traditions teach that, you know, and of course in the suttas, the Buddha says if this is a practice, you know, then all the blind and the dumb, you know, are arahants, right? Because a blind and the deaf, you know, the blind and the deaf are arahants because you don't see, you don't hear, you don't, you know, you don't do anything, then is that really the practice, you know? And some, of course, actually teach that, oh, you know, you must actually focus on the sense objects, you know, whenever anything makes the kilesas within you to arise. For example, there's loba, dosa, moha, you know, you must actually focus, you know, on the sense object that causes that kilesa to arise in you, and then see, you know, it come and go. You know, for example, you hear a sound that you become very angry at. Focus on that sound, you know. What's it, how it arises, you know, how it goes, you know, focus on the sense object. So is this really what the Buddha taught, you know, in terms of focusing on the sense objects? So that's also another teaching, you know. And then there's also some traditions that teach, do not watch your mind, you know, when you have just embarked on meditation, you know, and you know, and when you haven't achieved, you know, even Sotapatti, right, you know, then they say you should not watch your mind. You know, watching the mind is reserved only for anagamis, you know, only for those who have achieved the third stage of fruition. Then you should watch your mind. If you haven't become an anagami, then you should avoid watching the mind and just you know, watch your body, you know, watch your breath, you know, and just do meditation, you know, and just do anapanasati, you know, or maybe watch your rising, falling, you know, or maybe just do walking meditation, but don't ever watch the mind because it's only for anagamis. I'm not sure whether you heard about that. It's also another tradition. So you see, our Buddhist fraternity is so fragmented, you know, because so many traditions, and of course, uh, you know, we also hesitate, you know, to actually then um, you know, make comparisons between these different teachings, and definitely we are in no position to say who is right, who is wrong, because you know, we simply, I mean, if you believe, you know, that's the true way, you know, you believe a teacher is right, then I guess, you know, nothing can be done to, you know, and you hold tenaciously to your views and you refuse to change your views, you do not refuse to change your way of practice, then that's the way it is, you know, and it's just too bad. Perhaps it's your karma, you know, that you have actually then subscribed, you know, to the wrong way of practice, you know, and nobody, I mean, someone may be telling you it's not correct based on the suttas, but if you don't listen and you don't want to actually change, you don't have that open mind to change, then also there's nothing much can be done, you know, maybe it's just your karma, you know, that you subscribe to the wrong practice. So that's why the spirit of free inquiry, you know, is very, very important, you know. We must have that investigative mind, you know, to find out, you know, is it really true, you know, is this in line with what the Buddha actually taught? And by practicing this, right, what are we going to, what is the purpose of us practicing this, you know? And um, ultimately, right, you know, do the steps that we practice actually lead towards this letting go, you know, towards this disenchantment, towards this disillusion, towards wanting less, towards relinquishment, towards more contentment, you know, towards less suffering, towards less dukkha, you know. Do we need to ask ourselves, does it actually lead more to that, more samadhi, more clear-mindedness, more clear comprehension, more sati, sampajanya, more clarity of mind, you know? Do all these steps ultimately lead towards that direction? So we need to ask ourselves whether that is indeed you know, what we need to achieve, you know. So that's why for today's Dhamma discussion, you know, let me just very quickly just run through with you about this, what the Buddha taught in terms of this signless, you know, undirected, you know, and also emptiness meditation, you know. So I will just very quickly just run through with you. So as I mentioned before, this MN138, you know, if you look at in terms of the contents, you know, they very much relates in terms of this signless, undirected, and emptiness meditation, you know. So let me just perhaps just run through with you in terms of what the Buddha has taught, in terms of this three types of meditation, three ways of meditation, which are very interwoven. They are very, very much interwoven and closely related to each other. And how important, are these three ways of meditation, and ultimately, how do we practice in order to actually um, uh, internalize this within ourselves, right? And how do we practice these three ways of meditation, to actually practice signless, undirected, and also emptiness? How do we actually practice this, right? But actually, if you actually, read the suttas, ultimately, it is not different from what I've always explained about the importance of this this realization of non-self anatta. It all actually all converges towards that. But it's just that the ways that you practice of using this signless, undirected, and emptiness are all, they all converge towards this realization of non-self. Actually, and once you realize non-self, you also ultimately will realize also anicca and dukkha. It actually is actually quite, it comes together. I mean, to me, to me, it comes together, like a bundle. Because once you know non-self intrinsically, there's actually no permanent and changing self. Everything arises dependently arisen through causes and conditions. Then immediately you actually be able to see through the anicca, the impermanent nature of of existence, and also ultimately the unsatisfactoriness of existence, which is actually dukkha. So if you actually are able to see non-self, then ultimately you're able to see anicca and also dukkha as well. Because once you realize anatta, then you're able to see that that actually it's also anicca and dukkha as well. So that's why these three ways of meditation are actually very important. They are very much emphasized by the Blessed One. If you actually read through the suttas. And the first sutta I want to actually cover with you, is actually extracted from this Anguttara Nikāya, the numerical discourses of the Buddha. The Buddha is such a wonderful, a remarkable teacher, right? It's like whatever suttas that he actually or discourses that the Buddha actually delivered to the audience. He actually is able to tailor make his discourses to suit the temperament, and the temperament and the inclinations of the audience, and such that they're able to appreciate, and the Buddha is able to craft this in a very creative way. The numbers are sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, all the way to 11. It's actually quite remarkable, and then they make the discourses very interesting, and you can remember them very clearly. Like book of 8 will be 8 things. Book of 7 about 7 treasures. And then book of three things, or book of 1. What is the most important thing? That will actually lead you to liberation, to final liberation, and to knowledge, and realization. And the Buddha, will talk about kayagata sati, about how to actually watch your mind, how it reacts to the six sense objects. So it's actually pretty creative, and pretty remarkable. I find the Buddha, it's so remarkable. And I mean, I have never seen any teacher who is actually so creative and so remarkable. You can have all the numerical discourses, and then and you also have like connected discourses where the Buddha speaks on a common topic, common related area, and it can also be Majjhima Nikāya about middle length discourses. So it's actually makes the study of the sutta very interesting and very inspiring. So if you actually read this Anguttara Nikāya, from the Book of Threes. This book is about the tree, digit tree. So this discourse is actually called the Untitled Discourse on Greed, etc. So see, this discourse was given by the Buddha. These are the words of the Buddha. The Buddha says, for insight into greed, for you to actually understand this kilesa, this greed, loba, and of course, greed doesn't mean um, the kind of like the kind of greed and lust, raga, towards sensual lust, or the heavy greed, for for properties, for properties, for assets, greed, it's not that sort of that sort of that's sort of the sort of greed and lust, that the Buddha talks about. Greed here can also mean liking, or preference, oh, I like this, I like that, I don't like that person, somehow I just don't like the way, he I just don't like him. I don't know why, or you don't, or I prefer this, I prefer that, I mean, that liking itself is also greed. So there's a wide spectrum of greed. So for insight into greed, three things should be developed. What three? The Buddha says, if you actually want to have this insight, and the kind of uh, uh, understanding, and the realization, and penetration into what is this greed actually, and the Buddha says, if you want to actually have insight into this greed, you should actually develop three things. And what are these three things? The Buddha says, emptiness, samadhi, signless samadhi, and undirected samadhi, for insight into greed, these three things should be developed, and of course, this sutta, the Buddha also talks about, for you to actually have insight into complete ending, means a nibbana, giving up, ending, vanishing, fading away, cessation, for you to relinquish, for you to let go, in order for you to actually let go of this greed, to actually uproot greed itself, you must actually develop these three. The Buddha doesn't say just develop one, it says you must develop three, it comes together in the like a trio. Uh, it's a company of three, so you must actually practice this emptiness, samadhi, signless samadhi, and undirected samadhi. Then of course, the Buddha also talks about dosa and moha, hate. Sometimes it is not just hate as in hate, but sometimes dislike also, is dosa. I dislike, or I don't quite like, liking, is also hate, and delusion, moha, and also like all these other secondary Dhamma, qualities of mind, like for example, all this anger, acrimony, disdain, contempt, jealousy, stinginess, all these conceit, arrogance, negligence, obstinacy, aggression, deviousness, all these, are actually uh, like the different shades of gray, that actually ooze out from all this loba, dosa, moha, right? They have this common root, but they all actually they manifest themselves, in different ways or shades of gray, but ultimately they all lead through the roots and the stem towards this loba, dosa, moha, the three evil roots, so that's why the Buddha says if you want to actually have complete understanding of loba, dosa, moha, and all these other accompanying army, um, of all these unwholesome dhamma, unwholesome qualities. If you want to completely give up, and relinquish, and to actually seize and give away all this, or uproot all these kilesas, then these three contemplations and meditations, must be practiced, or should be developed, which is what, it is actually the emptiness samadhi, the signless samadhi, and also the undirected samadhi. So these are the three important meditations which the Buddha speak of, that you must develop. Okay? That's why the Buddha never speaks of, like for example, like what I mentioned just now, in terms of focusing, on the signs, in order for you to, or totally, be oblivious, or be oblivious to the sense objects, in order to realize nibbana. But the Buddha never speaks on all this, but the Buddha just talk about silence, undirected, and emptiness. So this is what the Buddha said. So these are the words of the Buddha, and satisfied the monks approve what the Buddha said. So you see, again, in this sutta itself, we can see that this is actually so important. These three, ways, of of contemplation. And again, in this SN 22.80, this sutta itself, I just want to highlight to you the importance of this signless samadhi, this signless contemplation. Okay, this sutta, is also something that's actually very inspiring to me. You see, here the Buddha actually told the monks, he says, this monks is the meanest of callings. Means it is the meanest, it's actually uh, it's actually the rudest and the meanest, of what people may call you, when you actually go out, right, especially for those who actually are not, do not actually have faith, in the Buddha's teachings, and they don't practice the Dhamma, when they see the monks coming in the direction, this is very common, right, in Malaysia, in everywhere, for those, many of them say, yo, it's so, many of them say, oh, the first thing I open the door, I see a monk, ayo, choy, 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 today I sure cannot, sure I cannot get the lottery already, right? It's something that's, it's even even in India that time, there is this thing, that when the monks actually went for arms round, they might actually get abused, and might get actually scolded, and might get chased away, So the Buddha actually warned them, this is the meanest of callings, that of one who goes begging, means that they call you, they call the monks beggars, those who actually go around begging, It is a term of abuse in the world to say, you scrap gatherer, wandering about bow in hand, means, the Buddha is telling the monks, when you actually go for alms round, it is very likely that you actually might meet, might encounter such unkind people, such unkind people who do not have faith, in the teachings of the Buddha, and they might actually hurl such, hurtful words, to you, that calling you like bald-headed shavelings, you hold a bow, go around begging like beggars, So, um, uh, so the Buddha is actually telling the monks, this is actually, this is the what others may actually call you, Then the Buddha says, this is the life undertaken by young men of good family, seeking their own good because it's good, uh, uh, and I know, and you actually renounce the world, because this is actually, seeking for your own good, if seeking your own good because it's good, and you're not compelled by anyone, not compelled by rulers or robbers, and because, and not on account of debts, it's because you're not on, it's not due to the fact that you're in debt, that's why you become a monk, and not through fear, not for a livelihood. You certainly do not become a monk just to earn a livelihood, right, but you become a monk because, you have this aspiration in your mind, here I am, plunged into birth, decay and sorrow, decay and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I'm actually being engulfed by all this, and thrown into suffering, into dukkha, overcome with suffering, So surely there must be a way of bringing this entire mess of suffering to an end, So, um, um, so the Buddha actually tells the monks that the reason why you become you renounce the home, the household life, and went forth, is because of this aspiration, that you want to be out of samsara, you want to cut this inconceivable journey, in samsara, that has since beginning, and is actually inconceivable is the end, it's never ending, because it just goes on as long as ignorance is there, as long as the asavas are there, definitely, this whole cycle will continue and on and on in all the realms of existence, So, uh, so of course the Buddha actually warns, like, but if the person actually renounces, but he's greedy for sense pleasure, there's fierce passion in him, he's corrupted, he's not mindful, he doesn't have samadhi, he's scatterbrained, his faculties are uncontrolled, sense doors are not controlled. Then the Buddha says, just like a funeral torch, lit at both ends, but there's actually a dung, smeared, in between, which is actually no cannot be used as a fuel, So the Buddha says this is how I describe a man who has lost his home and wealth. It's like you lost on both counts. You have lost your home and you have given up your wealth. Yet, you actually cannot, achieve the spiritual goals, of a recluse life. So it's like on both ends you are also lost. You see. So what's the point? If It's like you are worldly, you give up everything, but on the spiritual end also you don't get anything because you are so lazy, and you're greedy, you have this passion and lust, and that's why you have these thoughts of lust and ill will, So the Buddha says, if you actually want to make sure, that you want to practice well, and do not and you end up, as a monk, that actually has got this wild passions, fierce passions, you have all these loba dosa moha in your mind, and you are not concentrated, you don't practice well, So the Buddha says, in order for you to actually ensure that these unskilled states, uh, disappear utterly in him, means you want to completely eradicate all this, all these uh, unwholesome qualities, of monkhood. Then the Buddha says that you have to practice what? You have to be established in the four foundations of mindfulness, the satipatthana, all who practices, concentration on the signless, you see. See, the Buddha already told the monk that, you have to practice samadhi, on the signless, So that's why they say, indeed, monks, this samadhi on signless is greatly to be commended, The Buddha actually praises this signless samadhi, the concentration of signless, or means the samadhi of signless, if developed and frequently practiced, is of great fruit and great profit. You see, in this sutta, the Buddha already underscores the importance of this signless samadhi. Okay, and again in SN 40.9, again there's this sutta also called the signless. You can actually read all these suttas. Yourself, in detail, but I'll just run through with you the gist of the essence of it now, So here, this SN 40.9 is actually a very inspiring account of how Venerable Moggallana, achieved arahantship, and I'm sure many of you actually knew that when he was actually striving to be an arahant, he was practicing, very, very hard, but, he kept on, being assailed by the five hindrances, becoming very tired, becoming very lazy, very and sometimes the lust arise in him. He keeps on thinking about the the uh the household life, the five causes of sensual pleasure that he used to enjoy, and then suddenly all these thoughts kept welling up in him, that he found it very difficult to practice, to attain arahantship, and then uh um see then you see so this sutta actually records, the thoughts of Venerable Moggallana. You see, it's very interesting. He says that, then, friends, I thought, the silent samadhi of the heart, the silent samadhi of the heart. They say, now what is that? This Venerable Moggallana. Then he said, then I thought, in this among, paying no attention to any distinguishing signs. You see, this is already the first clue. What this signless is. Means you don't pay attention to the distinguishing signs. You don't pay attention to the signs and features of the sense object. For example, when someone actually says something hurtful to you, you don't pay attention. You don't dwell on the sense object. You don't dwell on the on what is actually been spoken, or what you heard, on the sense object that has impinged on your ear base, right? But you don't actually pay attention to the signs and features. You don't actually, go and dwell, and go and keep on churning and churning in your mind. Why did he say that? Why did he say such a uh such a hurtful thing about me? So you don't pay attention to any of these distinguishing signs, and you enter and dwell in that samadhi of the heart, which is without signs. Means you actually enter into this samadhi that doesn't actually have this sign. You means that you don't actually um you don't flow out to the sign. You don't actually drift into the sign. You don't get engulfed into the sign, so much so that you become con- you know continuously boiling mad, and boiling furious, about why someone actually said this about you. Instead, you should actually um you know uh do not pay attention to the signs, and enter into this samadhi of heart, which is without sign. So that's why Venerable Moggallana says this is called the signless concentration of the heart, signless samadhi. Then he says, pay no attention to any distinguishing signs. I entered on and dwelt in that samadhi of heart which is without signs. So he doesn't actually pay attention. But then he will actually uh, he does not actually allow his mind to actually drift and flow and get engulf into this sign that actually would then result um, in him his mind being assailed by loba dosa moha so that his mind doesn't react by loba dosa moha. Remember the Buddha actually in the sutta actually says our mind is intrinsically bright and luminous. It's because of this visiting kilesas that actually flow into our mind, like agan dukkha upa kilesa. It's like you know the like visitors that flow and assail our mind, and actually they flow and they sort of like invade our mind, so that's why if you are able to first of all stop yourself, do not actually dwell on the signs and features, bring back to your watch your mind, how is it reacting to it, and do not dwell, and you need to be very sure, is there loba dosa moha in my mind, and and if you know the loba dosa moha in your mind, then you need to be very careful, and need to make effort to eradicate this, loba dosa moha immediately, and don't let it fester in your mind, like a sore, like a disease, it actually will sort of just overwhelm your mind, and then you become you and then you react with loba dosa moha, that's where create all the unwholesome karma, right? You react very unwisely, that's why you don't have that sati sampajanya, you do not contemplate, and you do not actually sort of like apply the brake, so that the car will quickly decelerate, it's like it's like you keep on pressing the accelerator, so it become more and more, like you go and add oil into it, you keep on looking at the object, it makes you angry, right? Then you keep on dwelling on it, keep on thinking about it, you keep on churning, wow, it's like the whole day your mind is just boiling with anger, right? So that's why they say silence concentration means you must actually, make sure you don't dwell on the signs and features. Go back, to your mind and watch your mind. How is it reacting to it? That's really samatha practice. Being actually, regaining your composure, regaining your composure, and also, also your tranquility. Try to actually get back, to this tranquil state of mind, so that you're able to then investigate, right, in terms of how this arises through causes and conditions, and how is it actually intrinsically empty, it's non-self. That's how you actually apply what the vipassana part of it, right? So that's why the Buddhist samatha and vipassana is very important, but it starts with this signless thing. If you don't have this signless samadhi, you're going to be engulfed, and get swallowed by this sense object, and then you just basically go into like a whirlpool, you get swallowed into this whirlpool, it's like you just keep on and dwelling into this sense object. That's why you see this Moggallana, he's practicing this signless samadhi, then um uh you see, then you see, they say, I say, oh, then Venerable this Moggallana says, Venerable Moggallana says, pay no attention to any distinguishing signs. I entered on and dwelt in that concentration of heart, which is without signs, But as I dwelt thus, the consciousness conforming to signs arose. Means, uh, the he actually started to drift with the sign, his samadhi, his sati, mindfulness, and samadhi itself is in a way like faltering, such that he finds that his consciousness, his vijnana, is slowly flowing, with the sign, he's actually slowly being in a way like being engulfed with the sun. He's slowly in a way drifting with the sign, means he's slowly um you being sort of like um being pulled by the sign, so that he started thinking about all the sense objects that arise in his mind, arising from the five hindrances, all those greed, sensual pleasure, the anger, the hatred, all these things, the remorse, uh, all these five hindrances start to invade him, then he finds it very difficult to actually attain samadhi, to contemplate, the vipassana, right? To actually, realize the non-self nature, he finds that this signless samadhi itself is actually faltering, that he's actually getting engulfed into this signs, So then, the blessed one, through his psychic power, this the Buddha transformed into this astral body, he actually the Buddha then appeared before Venerable Moggallana, and then the Blessed One came to me by his powers, his psychic powers, and then he told Venerable Moggallana, Moggallana Brahmana, do not slacken off, in the signless samadhi, make your mind steady, make the mind one pointed, concentrate your mind on the signless samadhi. You see, the Buddha actually asked Venerable Ananda, to actually first of all, concentrate and establish, his samadhi on this signless samadhi. That you should actually not flow with the sign, but you should actually go back, watch your mind, how is it reacting, and do not react with loba dosa moha. If there's loba dosa moha, the Buddha says just like when you look at the mirror or in a in a bowl of water, if you see any smudge on your face, for example, there's like maybe a rice particle on your mouth, I'm sure you quickly want to, clean it, right? Otherwise, it looks so unsightly, right? When someone, sees that there's actually smudge, or rice grain, on your mouth, it's, you quickly want to, clean it, right? Just like what's here, if you see any loba dosa moha, quickly, you have to actually gather your effort to eradicate this unwholesome, kilesas, these kilesas that have arisen in you, you have to quickly, uproot them, do not just, adopt a passive thing, watching it come and go. It doesn't, the Buddha never taught, watching your kilesas come and go, you have to make the effort by using the source of wisdom to actually uproot, all this loba dosa moha, and use them as the grease for this tree of wisdom to grow, by using the kilesas themselves as the fertilizer, to contemplate them, how they arise through causes and conditions, So it all starts with this signless samadhi, because once you actually don't have this silent samadhi, then there is no sati sampajanya to actually practice, and you cannot apply also uniso manasikara, because your mind, keeps on dwelling on the sign, on the sign, with the sense object, and if you cannot have this silent samadhi, then it's very difficult for you to realize the stages of fruition, and to realize the intrinsic nature of existence. So that's why this silence is so important, That's why this very Moggallana, when he was striving to be an arahant, you see this Buddha actually appeared in him in astral body, and told very Moggallana, you have to establish yourself and compose yourself, and make the mind uh, compose, and make the mind, be able to, uh, to meditate, and to have this samadhi based on the signless, That is the first step, in order for you to contemplate, and make sure that, your mind is not invaded and not assailed by loba dosa moha, because, once you dwell, into this sense object, then, your mind becomes engulfed in it, then all these you become lost, you become overwhelmed, and that's where you then start to react, based on all these unwholesome qualities, unwholesome sankharas, unwholesome volitions in your mind, that you actually want to lash out at someone, you want to scold, or sometimes even it comes to fightings, using weapons and all this, killing someone, all because of what, the sense object itself, that has triggered off, the anger, like all these road bullies, or even road uh fights, all because of what? Because a single trigger of the sense object, and you become lost in it, you dwell on the sense object, you dwell, you keep on dwelling, someone has hurt, has not has actually damaged my car, someone has hurt me, you dwell in that, so that's why, your mind has become invaded by the visiting from outside, the all these Opa Kilesas, they have actually visited you, like visitors, uh, Agantuka, it's like they're actually from outside. So they flow, and they actually soil your mind that's intrinsically luminous, But because of all these kilesas, they taint your mind, they soil your mind, they actually dirty your mind, and you becomes like, your mind has been overwhelmed by loba dosa moha, and because of that, you actually then react, very negatively, very adversely, and that's where you get into trouble, and you get into a lot of this unwholesome karma that you create because of what? Because you did not apply the break in time, you keep on moving, you keep on, and you don't have this signless samadhi, and you keep on dwelling on the sign. That's the problem. So that's why the very first thing is signless samadhi. It's very important. And you can see from the various Therigatha, the verses by the nuns, and many of these are actually all arahants, like Sona, of course this sutta talks about Sona actually had 10 children, she gave birth from to 10 children from this body conjuries, he called this body conjuries like a jumble of body parts because it's an arahant, right? She's an arahant. So I, now weak and old, approach a bhikkhuni, uh, uh, this is before she before she became an arahant. She approached a bhikkhuni. Then the Dhamma she taught me, in terms of the sense spheres, the elements, the six elements, about the groups, and I heard the Dhamma, right? The Buddha's teachings are actually, if you read like what I actually spoke about last week, in terms of the 6 ways of meditation that the Buddha asked us to actually counter check and verify whether someone has indeed attained arahant. You remember the 6 things, in terms of what is heard, in terms of the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense, internal external 6 sense door, the 4 noble truth, the 6 things. So actually, if you read the sutras, all these are converged towards the 6 things, the 6 ways of practice towards arahantship, and you see here, uh, uh, you see, I heard the Dhamma, and having shaved my hair, this Sona went forth, became a nun, while still a probationer, I purified my eye divine, and she actually had this, she is able to develop the divine eye, just by Venerable Anuruddha, she able to see the entire universe just on his palm, he can actually see the entire universe with all the galaxies just on his palm, and former lives I knew and where I lived before, she could collect all the past lives, all the psychic powers that she developed, and then one pointed, well composed, the signless I developed, you see. See, everything relates to these 6 sense doors, how you actually develop the silence through the 6 sense doors, be very mindful, establish, anchor your sati, on the 6 sense basis, be very aware, whenever the sense object comes into contact with you, right? How do you react to it? How does your mind react to it? Is there loba dosa moha, or if there's no loba dosa moha, it's fine. But if there's loba dosa moha, you really have to apply the contemplation of non-self, in order for you to underline the intrinsic emptiness, the underlying empty nature of all this, and develop, this illusion and this enchantment and let go, slowly, gradually, instead of reacting, very adversely to all these sense objects. So that's why having self-control and self-restraint is very important, especially in the practice of the Dhamma, we don't just react the way we like, whenever we hear someone says, most Westerners will tell you, if you hear actually something very hurtful or what, you feel angry, just go back, just lash out. It's good psychologically, you shouldn't hold back emotion. But you see, actually, by doing that, you are actually creating more and more harm to yourself. In fact, by lashing out, you actually, create a lot of this, negative energies, and you actually, inflict hurt, on not only others but also yourself, and of course, ultimately, you actually commit a lot of this, akusala, sankhara, all these, unwholesome volitions in your mind, that will bear fruit, and instead of maybe what you heard is actually your vipaka, but because, you didn't have sense restraint or self-restraint, and then you go and actually lash out again, the, the, just like, when you play, that metal ball that you hit, it's like, it's supposed to actually come to an end already, if you do not actually, lash out, with further negative karma. But instead of letting it, let the metal balls on the string, to actually oscillate slowly to a stop, you again, you go and, start to hit, the others with other balls again, such that they start to oscillate again. So you're creating another round of karma, right? So which is even worse, which may land you, in the woeful plains, depending on what you have done in reaction to this. So that's why this signless samadhi is so important. It relates to self-restraint, sense restraint, so that I do not do something that I will regret later, and then immediately release, unclinging now and quench, knowing the five roots well, they exist with their roots removed, and now she's unperturbable, she's an arahant, and now rebirth is no more. So this this nun Sona, this she actually she's a bhikkhuni, bhikkhuni, and venerable Sona, now she's an arahant, and she has no more rebirth. You see, so very inspiring, and you see the first thing, one you can see here, one pointed, well composed, in actually practicing samadhi, she actually practices the signless. See that she already mentions the signless I developed. So how important this is, and again, in AN 6.13, just to share with you in terms of how important this signless is, there's this sutta in AN 6.13, Book of Six, from Anguttara Nikāya, is actually means of escape. So, and the Buddha actually tells the monks, these six properties are means of escape, which six. And of course, the Buddha talks about, metta, is actually the escape, for ill will, compassion is the escape for being vicious, being evil, and wanting to hurt someone, right? Wanting to be, very vicious to people, cruelty, So compassion is actually the escape for this, and appreciation, in terms of the sympathetic joy, in terms of um, mudita, is actually is escape for resentment and jealousy and envy, right? And you must have this sense of appreciation, sense of joy, sympathetic joy. When you see sadhu, when you see someone actually has done a good perform a good action, I rejoice in your action, I appreciate, I actually have this joyful happiness, joyful appreciation, I actually rejoice with you, so that's actually mudita, it's actually the, what do you call that? It's the escape, lah, it's something, it's like um, something that you use to counteract the this resentment, and then Buddha says this equanimity is also the escape, uh, uh, for in terms of passion, in terms of uh, so that's another what do you call that? That's another escape as well. You says um, equanimity, right, is the escape, for this passion, that's escape, so you must actually practice equanimity. So after that, you see the Buddha here, he says, furthermore, there's a case where a monk might say, although the signless has been developed, pursued, and basically you have actually well developed the signless, and you say that my consciousness, still follow the drifts of the signs. Um, so what the Buddha is actually saying, that if someone is actually well established in this signless, and someone says that even though he has well developed this signless, his consciousness still follow the drift of signs, means his consciousness is still being pulled, by the sense object, So the Buddha says, do not say that, please do not represent the blessed one. The Buddha says it's impossible. There's no way that when the silence has been developed, and has been strengthened, has been well developed and grounded, that the consciousness will follow the drift of science. So Buddha says that possibility doesn't exist. For this is the escape from all signs, the signless as an awareness release. You see, the Buddha says this signless samadhi is the escape from all signs. Means if you're able to develop this signless samadhi very well, whatever sense object that impinge on you, you are actually not um you're not affected, and you do not actually get swollen, into this whirlpool of sense object. You do not react adversely to it. You feel equanimous, and you sort of like step back, and you don't quite get uh angry, or you don't get greedy, or you don't have loba dosa moha. You just feel just completely equanimous and equipoised, and you don't actually follow with the science anymore. So that's why the Buddha says, if you're able to develop this up to the level, where you become an arahant, a perfected enlightened being, then uh, this is the escape from all signs. Whatever sense object that comes to you, you do not react to it anymore, and you're not actually affected by it, and you do not actually react with loba dosa moha with you anymore. Loba dosa moha anymore. So that's why this signless samadhi is so important. And lastly, the sixth one, the Buddha says, if you say that you have actually uprooted this conceit, as a fetter, and you do not actually have this notion of I am, I am this, my, me, mine, or I am. If you actually don't have this, um, uh, is it possible, Buddha says, that this person still actually is uh, hurt by the arrow of perplexity and uncertainty, whenever the sense object comes to you, you still perplexed, and then the sense object overpowers your mind. The Buddha says, don't say that, you shouldn't speak in that way, don't represent the Blessed One. It is impossible, the Buddha says, when you have actually remove this conceit, and you do not, you have actually realized non-self, and you don't have this notion of I am, or I am this, or me, or mine, then the arrow of uncertainty, will not overpower your mind, and you will actually not be uh, um, uh, not be assailed by loba dosa moha anymore. So uh, so the Buddha says, that possibly doesn't exist. For this is the escape from the arrow of uncertainty, the uprooting of conceit. I am. You see. So that's why the Buddha says these are the six properties that will actually allow you to escape. From this six unwholesome sankharas, six unwholesome dhamma, six unwholesome qualities, in terms of these four sublime states, and also in terms of silence, and also of what emptiness, right? If you look at the last paragraph here, the Buddha talks about I am, or non-self. The Buddha is actually effectively, it's about samadhi on emptiness. Because once you realize non-self, everything is dependently arisen through causes and conditions, you find that there's actually no permanent unchanging self there. It's just that, for example, you see a flame, right? You light a flame, a candlelight. Sometimes, you offer a candlelight, like a lotus candle, in front of the Buddha, or maybe the devas, you actually respectfully offer light to the devas and Buddha, and you see this fire that's lighting, or this light, the luminous light, that's actually like, such shining so brightly, and shining, giving such beautiful lights, right? Resplendent lights, to the entire, your house or your vihara, then you actually ask yourself, is this flame actually, does it have a self, or is it dependently arisen through causes and conditions? Then actually, if you actually look at the flame is there because of what? The flame is there because you actually have got wax there, right? And there is actually a wick, and of course there is air. That's why, the fire is able to combust. That's why, this air, this fire giving out the light, the light itself is dependent on the flame. And the flame in turn is actually dependent on all these conditions, right? Dependently arisen to this wax, to the to the wick, to the air, whatever. So that's why all these um dependent on these causes and conditions. That's why there is actually luminosity, you know. So if you ask yourself, this brightness, this luminosity, is it actually, does it have a self? The answer is no, you know. It's not tenable that you actually say that it's self, right? It is not possible that you have a self because it is actually non-self. It's precisely because it arises through causes and conditions. That's why it's there. You cannot say that the flame is there because it's there, you know, and it doesn't depend on conditions, you know. Can you imagine you if you say that itself means that the flame is just there burning without any conditions? It cannot be, you know. So you cannot say that the flame actually has got, you know, a self. That's why the flame itself or the light is actually empty of a permanent, unchanging self. That's why it's anatta, you know. So which means it's actually empty of a self, you know. Intrinsically, it's empty. That's why the Buddha says, if you're able to realize this non-self, you know, then you would uprooted conceit. I am. That's why the Arahant, you know, is able to completely eradicate conceit through this realization, the full realization of non-self, you know. And that's why the Buddha says these six properties, you know, are so important. And one of them is actually signless, and the other one, the last one, is emptiness. You see, so this sutta itself, the Buddha already mentions about two very important samadhi, which is signless and also in terms of emptiness. You know, and let me see this for this. Okay, for this sutta itself is actually DN16. I just want to show you this part. Uh, wait, let me see. Oh yeah, correct. I should look. Okay, this part, DN16 actually records the last days of the Buddha, you know, before the Buddha passed into Paranibbana in Kushinara. It actually, this sutta actually um, records, you know, the conversations, mainly the conversations between the Buddha and Venerable Ananda, you know, and the exhortations of the Buddha, you know, in terms of, you know, how, you know, we should strive, you know, and be an island to ourselves, you know, and do not depend on others, you know, and to strive to realize the Dhamma, you know. So I just want to share with you this part where it actually recounts the Blessed One was actually seriously ill, you know, and he actually came down with a deadly sickness. So uh, there was so at that the Blessed One, you know, at that age, at that time, the Buddha actually entered upon the rainy season, you know, the Vasa, you know, and there arose in him a severe illness and a sharp and deeply deadly pain came upon him, you know. So the Buddha was actually became very severely ill, you know, and there was this very very deadly pain, you know, very severe pain, you know, inflicted him. But the Buddha actually endured them mindfully and clearly comprehending, you know, using sati sampajanya, you know, he actually endured the pain, you know, and was actually unperturbed, you know, undisturbed, you know. And then it actually occurred to the Buddha, you know, he says that it would not be fitting if I came to my final passing without addressing, you know, those who attended to me, you know. So then let me suppress this illness by strength of will, you know, and resolve to maintain the life process and live on, which means the Buddha actually wanted to give the last address for those who supported him and who attended to him, you know, and he wanted to bid bid farewell, you know, to say goodbye to the bhikkhus. But before he did that, he said, I need to actually suppress this illness by my strength of will, you know. The Buddha actually had the power to do that. Because of his strong samadhi, he was able to suppress his pain and he resolved to maintain the life process and to live. For means he actually consciously, you know, made the will to live on, you know, until, you know, he has actually fully, you know, um, uh, dispense with his responsibilities, then only he will pass into paranibbana. But in the meantime, you know, he suppressed his illness. Then the Buddha, you know, suppressed the illness by strength of will, you know, and Buddha's sickness was actually allayed. So he became better, you know, after he applied the strength of will, you know. And the Buddha recovered from the illness, and soon after his recovery, he came out from his dwelling place and sat down, you know, in the shade of the building, you know, on a seat prepared for him. Then Venerable Ananda approached him, you know, um, um, and of course, this sutta itself, it records, the conversation. I'll just go straight into this. That actually, what Venerable Ananda wanted him he told the Buddha, Bante, I still had some little comfort, the thought that the Blessed One will not come to his final passing away until he has given some last instructions respecting the community of bhikkhus. Means, Venerable Ananda was actually asking the Buddha, perhaps you could teach us some Dhamma, before you pass the Parinibbana. Can you give us some last minute instructions so that we will listen very attentively and we'll practice? Can you give us some last moment guidance before you leave us? Can you give us some instruction? Then the Buddha says, what more does the community expect from me? I've set forth the Dhamma without making any distinction. There's nothing, Ananda, with regard to the teaching that the Buddha holds to the last with the closed fist of a teacher who keeps some things back. So which means that what the Buddha is saying, I've actually taught all that I know about the Dhamma. There's nothing that I hold back with a closed fist. Everything of the Dhamma is actually open. Is my hand is open. The fist is open. I never close my fist. When it comes to the uh, the Dhamma, So the Buddha actually told Venerable Ananda, now Ananda, I'm frail, I'm really old, I'm actually very aged now, old aged, and I'm ready. This is my 80th year. I'm already 80 years old, and my life is spent, like an old cart, hold together with much difficulty. So the body of Tathagata is kept going only with supports, with this will to live, um, it is Ananda only when the Tathagata, disregarding the external objects, the cessation of certain feelings, attains to and abides in the signless concentration of the mind, that this body is more comfortable. You see, even the Buddha, even practice, ascribe such high importance to this signless samadhi, that when he was ill, and he was actually not well, and he actually was abiding, and practicing this signless concentration of mind, this signless samadhi, that his body actually felt more comfortable, that he was actually able to address the monks, even in his last days. So you see, this signless concentration is actually very, very important. It's highly emphasized by the Buddha. You see. Wait, and then the other thing I also want to share with you. Sorry, this sutta seems to have run. Let me see. From where I actually reviewed it yesterday. Wait, hold on. This one is actually on Vangisa, one of the venerables during the Buddha's time. Oh yeah. Here. Sorry. Okay, this part is actually um about this Venerable Ananda, It says soon after his ordination, it's about this Venerable Vangisa, Venerable Vangisa, accompanied Venerable Ananda on a visit to the house of one of the king's ministers. So this Venerable Vangisa, after he became a monk, after his Upasampada, he became a full-fledged monk, he actually accompanied Venerable Ananda on a visit to the house of one of the king's ministers, maybe because they were invited, by the king's ministers for dana, Then on the occasion, a number of women of the household came and paid reverence to the elder, asking questions and listened to his preaching, But at the sight of these women, sensual desire, was aroused in Venerable Vangisa, because he was just newly ordained. So when he saw these women in the minister's house, immediately sensual desire, well up in him, and aroused in him, which he immediately confessed to Venerable Ananda, So he confessed to Venerable Ananda. Then he recorded this incident in this poem. Venerable Bangisa said, I burn with sensual desire. My mind is inflamed with passion. All of pity. Please tell me, Gautama, the effective extinguishing of it. Then Venerable Ananda said, your mind is inflamed because of distorted perception. Shun the aspect of beauty associated with passion. See construction. Construction means what? Sankhara, right? It means fabrication. Whatever there's whatever that's constructed means it arises through causes and conditions, which means it's intrinsically empty, There's nothing permanent about it, It's empty of a permanent self. So when the conditions and causes and conditions change, everything change. Everything is in a state of flux, and if all these if any of the components there actually disappear, or actually ceases, then this sankhara also ceases, So it's never satisfactory, It's actually a lot of dukkha, and it's impermanent as well. Because why? Because it's actually anatta, there's actually empty of a permanent unchanging self. That's why um uh, Venerable Ananda actually told Venerable Angisa, devote your mind, one pointed and well composed to the contemplation of foulness, let mindfulness be directed towards the body, and full of disenchantment for it, Actually, the translation here is the body, this kaya gata sati, but actually kaya, is actually not body, Kaya, if you read the other parts of suttas, kaya can also can mean many things in different contexts. So if you attend Venerable Agachita's workshop, you know that this body itself, actually, it refers to actually watching your mind, how your mind reacts, to the sense objects, whether there's loba, dosa, moha, because if you if you direct your mindfulness to the body, how will you know where the sense objects come in? How does it react to this sense object? You keep on watching the mind, keep on watching the body. How would you actually know what happens in your mind, right? The mind is the forerunner of all things, You must be watching your mind, not watching the body. You must be watching the mind to see what actually emerges in your mind, whether loba, dosa, moha, or what, Right? That is the forerunner of all things. It is the mind, Right? So mind, is actually the chariot, the chariot driver, he's actually the main driver, of this of this of everything, So that is actually watching the mind. That is actually what we mean by kaya gata sati, not actually watching body but watching the mind. So that's why this Venerable Ananda says, contemplate the signless. You see, he told Venerable Vangisa, contemplate, and meditate on the signless, means you do not actually get pulled, by the sense object, do not get sucked into the sense object, such that the loba dosa moha then invade your mind, assail your mind, like the agantuka upakilesa, otherwise your mind is actually, is actually luminous, but it becomes soiled because of all this. You don't actually practice this signless samadhi, and you get sucked into the sense, the sign, and the sense object, and that's why Venerable Ananda says, contemplate the silence, cast out the underlying tendency to conceit. See, underlying tendency to conceit means what? You have to actually practice emptiness meditation. You see, in this one simple sentence, the Venerable Ananda actually asked Venerable Vangisa to practice what? Signless meditation and also emptiness meditation, Actually, if once you practice these two, then it also becomes undirected meditation, because as you see in other suttas, undirected meditation means what? Your your mind does not actually flow and drift, outwards, externally from your mind, It doesn't flow outwards, and be attached and cling to the sense object, and then you are invaded and assailed by loba dosa moha. That is what the Buddha says means by undirected samadhi, So signless samadhi and undirected samadhi, they go hand in hand, because then the means that your mind does not flow outwards, does not cling to the sense object, and it does not flow outward, It remains composed within, Just like what Ajahn Chah says, he says it's fine, that the chicken actually run around the chicken coop, But once you open the chicken coop and the chicken start running out of the chicken coop, and they ran helter-skelter, that's where, you are no longer, you're being sucked into the sign, and you actually fall into Mara's bait already, Then you actually then react with loba dosa moha, just like the chicken running out of the chicken coop. But as long as your mind or mindfulness is actually kept within your mind, and it stays within composed, and you actually don't flow out, and you have signless samadhi and also undirected samadhi, because you practice this emptiness samadhi, emptiness meditation. That's where the chickens are kept within the chicken coop. If you read books by Ajahn Chah, that's how he actually used a very, very a very, very creative, and very smart, and very, very, very graphic, and very, very, very accurate way of describing how you should meditate. He says, as long as your mindfulness is within, just like the chickens keep being kept in the chicken coop, then it's fine. But the moment, the chicken coop is open and the chicken run helter skelter, that's where, your meditation is really gone. There's no sati, there's no samadhi, there's no sati sampajanya. Then you start to scold, you start to scold back, or even start to fight, or use weapon to kill. That's where, the chicken have run off the chicken coop. But if you're able to actually contemplate signless, and you're able to practice this emptiness meditation to actually uproot the tendency to conceit, this uh this this um uh, this conceit itself, this mana, this conceit, if you're able to uproot it, then, you are able to, um, be very equanimous and, equipoised, even to whatever sense order comes to you, you are just like, very relaxed, it's like, no, nothing ruffles your feathers, really, and you just find it's okay, so what, it's all empty anyway. I mean, it's like you know the underlying nature. I know it's not easy, but actually it requires practice. To actually reprogram and reframe your mind. And it's very important. And the only way you can reframe is when you slowly uproot the ignorance. Because the reason why we do a lot of things, and we actually allow loba dosa moha, to invade us, because we have this wrong vipalasa of wrong perception of self. We have this atta, this self, in whatever that we have. We always ascribe everything, and we always believe, and we want to hold on to this atta, this self. That's why this ignorance has such a powerful chain on us, this shackle on us, because of this what? Because of this ignorance of self. But once you're able to practice this emptiness meditation, signless meditation, undirected meditation, slowly you're removing, bit by bit, just like you're actually removing the banana tree trunk, slowly, you're actually removing layer by layer, and then ultimately, there's nothing else left, and there's nothing else that will actually bring you back to samsara. That's why this contemplator on signless, and conceit is so, 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 so important. Then that's why this Venerable Ananda actually advised Venerable Vangisa, whenever you this sensual desire or this lust arises in you when you see this sensually enticing objects come into your mind, then you need to actually, apply sati sampajanya, very quickly, and make sure you actually practice this signless concentration, and emptiness concentration, undirected, means don't let your mind flow out onto the sense object and be assailed by loba dosa moha, but keep it within yourself, and try to contemplate it in terms of non-self, and quickly and slowly let go of it. Just like the chickens being kept in the chicken coop, don't let it out of the chicken coop, otherwise there'll be chaos, right? The chickens, once they're out, they start flying over the way, you cannot catch them, they are all over the place. You make sure you don't open the cage, make sure you actually keep the cage locked, with a padlock. That's where you need to make sure that, this undirected meditation, samadhi, comes into play. Don't let it flow out. Undirected means it doesn't flow out. So then, by penetration of conceit, you will go about at peace. Means you attain nibbana, peace, right? Ultimate peace, nibbana. You so, that's why the sutta, is so wonderful, right? It teaches actually how to practice. That's why, whenever someone says the suttas don't provide any practical guidance by the Buddha, I can tell you, you're completely mistaken, because you haven't actually read the suttas, deep enough. Actually, the Buddha has given so much valuable guidance in terms of how to practice. But instead, if you keep on looking at other literature, other texts, you're just going astray, and you're practicing the wrong way by looking at, the jhana that's not taught by the Buddha, and you practice many other ways, which may land you in a different direction or path, or destination. So it's very, very important that we stay on the path, and look at what the Buddha actually taught. And you see, in terms of this AN 7.56 again, it's also a sutta. This sutta actually happened on this Vulture's Peak, mountain. I'm sure you've heard of Vulture's Peak, right? Many of you who have actually gone on pilgrimage to India, this is actually one of the Buddhist pilgrimage places that you should not miss. Vulture's Peak, where the Buddha was staying there, and many devas, right in the middle of the night, when everybody was asleep, the devas will come down, and they will meet the Buddha, and they will ask the Buddha questions, and discuss the Dhamma, and attain, various stages of realization, because, they actually spoke to the Buddha, and Buddha gave them guidance. And of course, on this occasion, two resplendent deities, glorious deities, lighting up the entire Vulture's Peak. I can't imagine this. It's like, oh, like, I don't know, like luminous, like much better than your handphone light. It's so bright, that actually went up to the Buddha and bowed down. And one of the deva actually told the Buddha, oh, these nuns are freed. I think the deva was actually trying to report to the Buddha, these two devas, that some certain bhikkhunis attain arahantship, and the Buddha actually agreed and just kept quiet, and acknowledged. Um, sorry, the Buddha approved. The Buddha said yes, correct. And of course these devas, knowing that the Buddha actually approved and agreed with them, they just bowed down, and then keeping on the right and just vanished right before your very eyes, just they come and they go, very fast, at the speed of lightning. And then at the time, this Venerable Mahamoggallana, and of course, the Buddha told what happened at Vulture's Peak to the monks. And then at that time, Venerable Moggallana was also sitting up from the Buddha. And then he was actually wondering, hey, which devas or Brahmas actually know, whether someone has become an Arahant. Then at that time, this Venerable Tissa, one of the monks, actually passed away. And then he was actually reborn in the Brahma world, because I think he was practicing samadhi, very high level, and then he was reborn in the Brahma world. There, all the Brahmas actually call him by the name of Tissa the Brahma, was very powerful and mighty, And of course, this Venerable Moggallana, decided to visit him, because they know that he knows that this is very powerful. So as easily as a strong man will extend or contract their arm, you see how marvelous this is, right? How remarkable. Moggallana could just fly from this Jetavana grove, from Anathapindika's monastery. He could just, at the speed of that you take to actually extend your arm, means you actually extend your arm, open up your arm, or you actually, when you contract your arm and you hold back your arm, you roll back your arm. That's the speed that Moggallana took to actually disappear from Savatthi, and then appeared in Brahma world. How powerful this Mahamoggallana is, right, for his psychic power. And then this Mahamoggallana, right, actually came off in the distance and said to him, and he told this Brahma, of course, Tissa, this Brahma Tissa, saw Mahamoggallana come, appear in the Brahma world. Then Tissa said, oh, welcome, welcome, my good Moggallana, welcome, it's been a long time since you actually visited us. Sit, good Moggallana, had prepared a seat for Moggallana to sit down. Then, of course, Moggallana sat down, and then Mahamoggallana actually asked this Brahman, which gods actually know whether a person has become an Arahant or not? Do all the Brahmas actually know? Then, to cut the story short, actually, this Tissa told Mahamoggallana, actually, some Brahmas know, some Brahma don't know. Some Brahma know whether somebody has become Arahant, and some don't know. Actually, for those those Brahmas who don't know are those who actually what? Who actually enjoy themselves day in, day out lah, they are very happy. Um, uh, um, look at this paragraph here. They are very absorbed, with their beauty, they are very happy with their fame, their sovereignty, and they enjoy themselves and don't truly understand any escape beyond Brahma world, they think this is actually the ultimate happiness, and there's nothing more to do. So if you actually ask these gods, who are more uh, absorbed in all this sensual enjoyment, then they don't know. But those Brahmas, who are they are more spiritual, they practice more, and they are not happy with all this beauty, happiness, and they are more spiritual in nature. Then they will know who have become arahants or who actually have not become arahants lah. So this is actually a bit long here, where, like whether you are ubato baga vimuta, free in both ways, whether you are free by wisdom, whether you are actually direct winners, and then you are actually attained to view, So all these are actually what the discussion between Mahamoggallana and this Brahma Tissa, Um, and then here, and then of course, and then of course, this Mahamoggallana then actually flew back to after visiting Tissa. Then he just left, and then he actually went back to another Pindika's monastery, and then uh, and then this Mahamoggallana reported to the Buddha, the conversation that he had with this Brahmatissa, and then and then and after he told the Buddha actually told Mahamoggallana. So he said, Tissa the Brahma didn't teach the seventh person. There's actually one more person he forgot that he did not actually teach, which is actually the signless meditator. You see, the Buddha actually called this the signless meditator. And then there's Mahamoggallana actually asked the Buddha, now is the time for Buddha to actually teach who this seventh person, the signless meditator is. See, this is where the meat of the sutta is. Then Moggallana take the case of a monk who not focusing on any signs, means first of all, you must not focus on the signs and features of the sense object. When something troubles you or something makes you unhappy, you must not focus and dwell, on the signs and features. Or for example, when you see something very attractive or sensually attractive, or maybe looking at somebody of the opposite gender, and you very you find very sensually enticing. So the first thing is you must not focus on signs and features, and you enter and remain in the signless immersion of the heart. The gods know of them. This venerable, not focusing on any signs, enters and remains in the signless immersion of heart. Then they might realize the supreme culmination of the spiritual path in this very life, and having achieved, their own insight, goal for which, man rightly go forth. So actually, the Buddha says there is this signless meditator, and this signless meditator is actually when you do not focus, because once you dwell on the sense object, and you start to then be sucked into this whirlpool, and then you actually start to react with loba dosa moha. That's where you actually then run the risk of breaking your precepts, become angry, breaching the precept, killing someone, or even you become greedy and you steal something, because you are overwhelmed, by the sign, you do not practice signless concentration, the chicken is out of the coop, and you actually start to steal, that's why people commit theft, maybe steal companies' funds, forge checks, or to steal money, because of what? Because of greed, and sensual misconduct, because of the lust, you're not able to control yourself, and you actually, reach the precept, you actually engage in sensual misconduct, when you already have a family, and you have a wife and your family, or even though, the person also, is already engaged, and already married, but, you have this sensual misconduct, So because of what? Because you don't actually practice signless samadhi, and you don't practice this undirected samadhi, where you don't allow your mind to flow out to the sense object, such that the kilesas invade you, and then, and soil your luminous mind, and just like, you allow the the cage to be open, you know. So that's where the chickens are out, you know, and that's where, you know, you actually don't have this this samadhi, you know, for you to practice this too. And because of that, you also don't practice, you know, the emptiness samadhi, because empty samadhi is very important for you to also realize, you know, the non-self nature. That's where it strengthens also the signless samadhi, you know. That's where you are able to be composed, you know, and further strengthen your spiritual strength, you know, not to flow out, you know, onto the sense object, you know, and and also supports the undirected, you know, and because you practice, you know, emptiness samadhi. So this emptiness samadhi, silent samadhi, and also undirected samadhi, they actually mutually support each other, you know. They actually strengthen each other, you know, because if you actually look very carefully, they are all building blocks, you know. They are all required. That's why the Buddha in the earlier sutta said the three must be practiced in unison, right? It must be practiced together. You cannot just one, you know, but you must practice all together, because they mutually strengthen, they mutually support each other. Okay, so that's why the Buddha again in sutta talks about this samadhi, this signless meditator, you know. That's why again silence is so important. In this SN 47.10, right, I just want to also run through with you about this directed and undirected, you see. Okay, okay, maybe I'll just quickly just explain to you. I see here it says Ananda among dwells contemplating the body, right? You know, mindful, putting aside um overly desires and dejections, you know, and then the same goes for feelings, you know, mind, you know, and phenomena, you know, the satipatthana meditation. So the Buddha says whenever you practice the four satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness, right, or establishments of mindfulness, you know, that's where the Buddha says you should establish your mindfulness. When you practice this, the Buddha says, um, as you thus practice, you know, some bodily objects arise, and physical discomfort or mental drowsiness cause your mind to wander to external things. Means in your mind, you start to wander off, and you become like being enticed and sucked in, you know, by the sense objects arise in you. You know, maybe you think about all the sensual pleasure you enjoy, you know, maybe you think about the food that you want to eat, or maybe you think, oh, this is so tiring, you know, this meditation retreat, you know, when is it going to end? I'm so tired, you know. And so all these things start to invade you, you know. And then the Buddha says, if this happens to you, then Ananda, you know, the bhikkhu's attention should be directed to some inspiring object of thought, you know, and he does directs it to some inspiring object of thought. Delight springs up in him, you know. When he's thus delighted, rapture arises, you know. When he experiences rapture, his body calms down, you know. When his body calms down, then there's joy. When there's joy, there's samadhi, you know. Then he reflects, the aim on which I set my mind has been achieved. Let me now withdraw my mind from this object, you know. And he does so without starting or continuing the thought process. So as he is aware of being free from initial sustained thought, inwardly mindful and joyful. So Buddha says, Ananda, you know, this is the practice, you know, of direction of mind, means directed mind, you know, means that whenever you have any uh, hindrances or sense object, you know, they are actually disturbing you, you know, or causing you difficulty in meditation. The Buddha says that you should actually direct your mind to another object that will actually inspire you, you know, that make you happy, you know, that will actually give you that spiritual energy and strength, you know, to strive on, to practice, you know, to realize, you know, the various stages, you know, of enlightenment, right? So you must continue to have the strength. But if you feel that you are actually being invaded by all this, you must actually switch your your attention to another object, you know. So this is what the Buddha calls directed meditation, you know. And then the Buddha says, so what is the practice of uh undirected meditation? See, the Buddha says, a monk who does not direct his mind to external things aware, you know, my mind is not directed to external things, you know. So he's aware my mind is not concentrated on or before or after, you know, it's set free and undirected, you know. So this Ananda is a practice for the non-direction of the mind, means it's undirected mind. Undirected minds means your mind does not actually flow to external sense objects, you know, and you are not actually invaded by sense objects about past or about future, you know, about what you did in the past and all this, but no, you're focused on the present, you know, and your mind is actually, it doesn't flow, you know, to the external uh, sense objects, and being actually overwhelmed by the sense objects, and you know, and reacting with loba dosa moha, just like chicken being let out of the coop, you know. So it's undirected, means, you know, you keep it within your mind, you know, and this is actually what the Buddha calls undirected meditation. So undirected and signless, you know, they actually relate to this sense object, you know, and we don't actually flow out, you know, to the sign, you know, and we are able to um, uh, be aware, you know, and we do not you know, react, you know, with loba dosa moha, because we're overwhelmed, you know, by these sense objects. So that is the practice of this undirected mind. So the Buddha, you know, in this sutta, you know, actually explain, you know. So that's why this is signless samadhi, you know, actually very much relates to what our sense restraint, right? You know, sense restraint, self restraint. So if you actually look at all the suttas, the Buddha actually talks about, you know, sense restraint, you know, in many suttas, like in SN 35.19 about the tortoise, the tortoise, you know, that remember about the jackal and the tortoise, you know? So the tortoise actually withdraws, you know, the four limbs and also the head into the shell, you know, so that, you know, it doesn't flow out, you know, but once it flows out and succumb to the sense object, then it's just that the jackal will just eat up the tortoise. Just like once you actually let your mind flow out, you know, and succumb to the sense object and react with loba dosa moha, then, you know, you succumb to mara, you know, and that's where, you know, you actually you actually catch the mara's bait, you know, and you're being trapped, you know. And just like this tortoise, that's why this this signless samadhi is so important, you know, to practice this sense restraint, you know, in like this SN 35.199 on the tortoise, you know. You can go through this very on your own. And also the cow herd also in AN 11.18 as well. The Buddha also talks about uh you know, how you should actually practice sense, you know, restraint, you know, by actually um uh you know, practicing this signless samadhi. You know, when you see a form with the eye, you see my cursor here, you know, you do not grasp at the themes and details by which, you know, you do not actually dwell, you know, or grasp, you know, or cling to the signs and features of the sense object. You know, don't, you make it worse, you know. It will make you more boiling mad, or, you know, make you more lustful, you know, or make you more hated, you know, more hateful, you know, of whatever that's actually causing you, you know. So that's why the Buddha says this actually sense restraint is very important, and signless concentration is very important. You see, he dwells without this is he's talking about the monk who does not dress wounds. So he dwells without restraint over the faculty of the eye. You know, evil, unskillful qualities such as greed and distress might assail him, just like what I described just now. So that's why signless concentration is so important. Again, in AN 11.18. Okay. And of course, in AN 3.52, also talks about these two very old people of about 120 years old actually came to see the Buddha, and they said, oh, you know, they're very old, you know, and they asked the Buddha to teach them something so that, you know, they can have good death, you know, or favorable death, you know, before they die, they want to do something wholesome, you know, to prepare them for the future lives. The Buddha actually says, um, this world is on fire, you know, with aging, illness, and death. With the world thus on fire with aging, illness, and death, any restraint of the body, speech, and mind, you know, in this current life itself, will be one's shelter, you know. It's your cave, it's your island, it's your refuge after death in the world beyond. You see, this restraint is so important. This signless samadhi, undirected samadhi, you know, it's so important, you know. And for you to actually strengthen these two, you must practice the emptiness samadhi. That's only you're able to let go, you know, using vipassana, you know, right? Of course, initially it's samatha, you know, you try to move your attention away, you know, and try not to dwell, you know, that's samatha. But you need to actually go down to the deep root cause of it, you know, and see the non-self nature through emptiness meditation, you know. That's where uh uh you know, it is so important, right, you know, for you to actually have that Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so that's why the Buddha's again, you see the restraint of the sense restraint is so important. Um, okay, maybe the other suttas I can just quickly run through with you. You know, in ASN 35.206, also the Buddha talks about, you know, sense restraint over the six sense doors. You know, of course, the Buddha actually uses the example of the six animals, you know, which actually refer to the six sense doors, you know, and how, you know, you should actually um, uh, how you should actually anchor and position yourself whenever six sense objects come into your sense doors. The Buddha says, if you don't actually have a strong pose that's implanted firmly on the ground, and tie the six animals around the pose, and you just let the animals run around helter skelter, then it's just like, you know, you're not practicing, you know, signless samadhi, you know, or undirected samadhi, you know, then you are just allowing yourself to be overwhelmed by the sense object. Your mind actually overflows, you know, to the sense object, you know, and that's where you know, you react, you're being assailed by loba dosa more, just like the six animals, you know, which are not tied to the post. But if you actually have the six animals tied to the post, and this post itself, you know, is actually where you practice this you know, this mindfulness, and you actually have this signless samadhi, you know, and you do not flow out to the sense object, and you hold firmly, you know, to this sati sampajanya, this mindfulness within yourself, you know, that you are fully aware, you know, about how your mind reacts to it, you know, and you don't allow yourself to, you know, react, you know, you don't dwell on the signs and features, you know, you come back, you know, and you watch your mind, you know, and you try to then investigate, you know, the non-self nature through emptiness meditation. And that's where, you know, you're allowed to, you're able to slowly let go, you know. So this is actually the same example, you know, of the six animals, you know, for those which are tied to the post and not tied to the post, to actually emphasize the importance of this signless samadhi, you know. So actually, in many suttas also, you know, if you actually read the suttas about this bahya, remember or not, this very famous saying given by the Buddha, you know, only the seen, there's the seen. Only the heard, there's the heard. Only the cognized, there's the cognized. You know, so what does the Buddha actually mean by this, right? Actually, the Buddha is actually, you know, saying that you must actually, you know, whenever a sense objects come into your sense door, you know, you actually must be able to um, you know, apply, you know, this signless samadhi, you know, and do not dwell, you know, on the signs and features, you know, and do not let your mind flow out, you know, and practice undirected samadhi, you know, and be aware, you know, and read and also watch your mind how it reacts to it, you know. If there is loba dosa moha, you know, then you know, contemplate non-self, you know, using this emptiness meditation to see the intrinsic nature of, you know, of non-self nature, you know, and let go, you know, of these kilesas, you know. So then you become then you know, you become equanimous, you know, and you don't react to it, you know, with averse reactions, like, you know, which involve loba dosa moha. So I think that itself is essentially what the Buddha means, you know, by what is heard, what is seen is only seen, you know, and what is heard, you know. So that's where, you know, how that's how we should actually um, practice, you know, and whenever there's any object, you know, that comes into your sense door, you know, make sure that you are able to apply, you know, this signless meditation, you know, undirected meditation, and also the emptiness meditation, you know, so that whatever that you see is just what is seen. Whatever that you heard is just what is heard. You don't react, you know, to it, you know, by greed, hatred, delusion, you know, and you don't actually let your mind flow out to the sense object and actually be overwhelmed, you know, such that, you know, you actually react to it adversely and in an unwholesome manner, you know. But instead, you actually apply the signless, you know, and undirected, you know, samatha, and then you also then apply emptiness meditation in terms of vipassana to investigate, you know, how it arises through causes and conditions, Like I mentioned earlier, in my previous talks on this MN 148, in terms of 6 sets of 6, right? I'm sure you have heard of that, where you can actually use that to also contemplate the non-self nature. I actually have actually here the MN 148, as I mentioned, the 6 sets of 6. That's how you actually contemplate the 5 aggregates through the 6 sense bases in terms of the non-self nature, and ultimately it's actually emptiness, empty of a permanent unchanging self. So that is you can actually uh in a way, um like craft your meditation, by actually using samatha and vipassana, hand in hand, through the use of signless meditation, through the use of this undirected meditation, and also this emptiness meditation. So um, uh, through this practice itself, I mean, you'll be able to slowly overcome, the fetters, and incrementally, and gradually, you'll be able to, you overcome and uproot, all the kilesas, and also uproot the ignorance, and also the affluence, the asavas that are the main cause, as to why we actually are still going round and round in this samsara, through this unending circles, or cycles, because we are still enshrouded, and enveloped, in ignorance, because we simply have not actually practiced this signless, undirected, and also this emptiness meditation that will actually all converge towards the realization of non-self, the anatta, which also would then also make you realize, the intrinsically impermanent nature and also the unsatisfactory nature of all conditioned phenomena or sankhara. And that's where you're able to slowly, um, remove all the fetters and all the kilesas, and slowly and incrementally, you'll be able to, you know, um, extricate yourself, from samsara, and attain ultimate happiness. And of course, for you to do that, the Buddha says you must always watch your mind. That's the very, very important thing. Always watch your mind. Just like which is also part of four foundation mindfulness, which is chitta nupassana. Always watch whether there's any loba dosa moha that arises in your mind. But for you to watch your mind, you must anchor yourself on the sense base, right? You must actually be aware, what you see, what you hear, because the moment you're negligent on the sense doors and your mindfulness is not anchored, on the 6 sense doors, then it's very difficult for you to actually watch your mind, because your mind will run, will wander, and you find that you're not able to, you're overwhelmed by it, So that's why, you must always watch your mind. That's why the Buddha says, uh, in this SN 35.153, this Ati Yoko Pariyaya Sutta, is there a method? The Buddha says, if you're able to watch your mind, just watch your mind, whether there's loba, dosa, moha, the Buddha says you actually can become an arahant in this very lifetime itself, just by watching the mind, because that is the most important, it is the forerunner of all things in your mind. So your mind is the one that creates volition and is the one that creates karma, and so you have to be very, very careful, and watch your mind all the time. And whenever there's any sense object that comes into contact, always watch whether loba, dosa, moha. The moment there is a quickly, switch into this signless mode, and switch into the undirected mode. Don't let the chicken come out of the coop. Make sure it's locked, and then from there, once you cool down, then apply vipassana, and apply emptiness meditation. That's why these three are hand in hand, they sort of like mutually support and mutually strengthen each other, just like samatha vipassana, like the yoke that actually yoke the cows together, So both samatha and vipassana must go hand in hand, and that's where this signless, undirected, and emptiness, they all mutually support each other. Once you apply signless and undirected in samatha, your mind is tranquil. You apply emptiness, but emptiness also gives you more wisdom. Then when you have more wisdom, then you're also able to strengthen your signless and also your directionless as well. Because you know already intrinsically, that everything is actually empty, non-self. So the next time, you're able to actually have a stronger silent samadhi and also stronger not undirected samadhi as well. So they're all mutually strengthen each other, mutually support each other, provide us, they are both integral, they're both essential, in a spiritual practice. So I hope from this talk itself, I can share with you and discuss with you, about the wonderful meditation that the Buddha has taught, in respect of this signless, undirected, and emptiness meditation, that all converge towards realization, of this non-self, which is actually is the pinnacle, is actually the crown jewel of the Buddha's teaching, and this is actually where we should actually strive, and once you actually are able to understand this non-self nature, you're able to then also realize about the anicca, and also the and also the intrinsically unsatisfactory nature, and all this will be essential components in our spiritual practice, as we tread the path, as we practice the Dhamma on the spiritual path. So hopefully from today's sharing itself, I've given you a little bit more clarity, and also understanding, that the suttas are actually a chest of jewels, as far as meditation. The Buddha has given so much guidance, in terms of how we should practice. It's not true that it's just theories and skeletons, guidance. It's everything is there. We just need to actually know, how to actually piece them together. Suttas, you cannot just not read one sutta, and to get the knowledge. You have to piece everything together to get a complete and comprehensive understanding and appreciation of the Buddha's teaching. So from this suttas, I hope I've actually shared with you, in terms of how this should be practiced, and giving us a very useful guidance, in order for us to achieve that big breakthrough to the Dhamma. So because once you achieve a breakthrough to the Dhamma, you have attained Sotapatti and you're Sotapanna, and you only have up to only 7 lifetimes in samsara, compared to the uncountable millions and zillions and gazillions of years that you've been in samsara. So it's like your suffering is just a sand particle compared to the great earth. Like the Buddha, your suffering as a Sotapanna is just like a grain of sand, compared to the great earth, or just a drop of water compared to the great ocean. So that is something that would be better than your ruler of the entire world. It's just remarkable. So I hope with this, you give you the inspiration to practice, to develop this signless, undirected, and emptiness, so that slowly and surely, we walk towards, the path, of becoming a Sotapanna, and all the way to Arahantship, where we can completely eradicate, from all the dukkha, that we have actually faced so far, and also we are going to face, in the future, if you remain, immersed in this samsara. Thank you.
Let us dedicate these merits that we have accrued to all being seen or unseen. Akasata ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiram rakkantu loka sasanang ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Aspiration. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavanit bana pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, visit and bring people. Bye-bye for now. See you all again next week.